Well, welcome to Career Propeller. My name is Jonathan. I'm joined today by Jack Player from Ambitious About Autism. Jack, welcome to Career Propeller.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm very good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad at all.
Good. Well, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate you taking time out of what I know is a very busy day to spend a little bit of time with us today. Perhaps you could start off by telling us a little bit about Ambitious About Autism, what the organisation does, and how you ended up being head of recruitment there.
Yeah, definitely. So, Ambitious About Autism is a national charity which supports young children and young people with autism. We actually run sort of several schools and a college across London, and looking to build that, which really is targeted at working with children and young people, providing education and life outcome and life support to young people with autism. We also, sort of from a charity perspective, we also run an employment program which is focused and targeted at supporting more young people into full-time employment. We work with sort of quite a range of employers and providers, supporting them with autism confidence. So understanding how to support young people in the workspace, providing training and understanding to their colleagues, but also their recruitment practice. We also do a lot of work within campaigning for change. We work with lots of parents and young families and advice and guidance with young people with autism. But the sort of a main area of we support is working on a day-to-day basis, providing educational support through our schools and college, and also life support in sort of preparing young people for life outside of education, and specifically young people with autism. From my perspective, I've as a head of recruitment, I've been with the organisation nearly 2 years now, and I work with our recruitment team to support sort of talent mapping and talent identification and attraction through our schools, college, and our charity services. So my role is to work with the sort of all aspects of our business and our team to sort of make sure we find the right people with the right skills and values to support our young people.
Yes. Okay. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later specifically about how employers can support people with autism to attract people, but also to help them through the interview process. I know that there are some adjustments that people with autism might need to help them through the interview process. So we're going to cover a bit about that a little bit later. But in terms of your career, how did you sort of get into recruitment? What was the attraction for you, and how did you start out?
Yeah, well, I suppose I've been in recruitment now for about 12 years, and talking to colleagues throughout the years, I think lots of us have the same or similar answers when it comes to how did we get into recruitment. I'm yet to meet many people that said whilst there's at school that recruitment was a career that they were really interested in developing. Yeah. So I was about 18, and actually it was through a friend, through a family friend had a small business based in East London. They were looking for somebody to come in as a recruitment administrator to support. They were a healthcare organisation, healthcare agency who worked with doctors and nurses. So it was almost sort of one of my first jobs, or permanent jobs. It was definitely my first permanent job, and quite interestingly, quite enjoyed it quite quickly, working with doctors and nurses in the healthcare sector. Yeah. Just sort of the answer which many people give is sort of fell into recruitment is probably the best way to answer it. But it really is. I think I always knew I wanted to work with people, but wasn't quite sure in what capacity. And it was through somebody giving me an opportunity in recruitment. And then I suppose since then I honed a lot of my skills and experience working for different recruitment agencies, specifically within healthcare, and actually sort of specialised in therapies and nurses. I really enjoyed working with NHS trusts, private organisations, and funny enough, schools and services like Ambitious About Autism were previously a client of mine from about 8 or 9 years ago. Right. So it's quite funny how I went round circle. Yeah. But for me, is I was always passionate about, whilst working in recruitment, I was always passionate about sort of the bigger picture around recruitment. So working with recruitment agencies, you're quite often involved at sort of the sort of mid and end processes of a recruitment campaign where a service is struggling to hire somebody. But I was always interested in that pre-piece. What have you gone through? And, tell me more, understanding more about an organization's culture and understanding how we can find best fits or the right people for services. So after about sort of 7 or 8 years in agency, I transitioned to in-house or internal recruitment and worked for a large private healthcare organisation who supported children and young people, children and adults with mental health conditions within hospital services. Yeah. And I really started to enjoy looking at the whole picture of recruitment, looking at sort of services and service development when it looked at staffing and looking at succession planning and the much wider picture. That also coincided with me sort of managing recruiters and recruitment teams and looking at onboarding, and really sort of started to increase my passions in sort of creating an amazing onboarding journey. So I think it's great to have a great recruitment experience, and we really strive for candidates to have a great recruitment experience. Actually, what's the onboarding experience? How do you welcome somebody into an organisation, and how does somebody feel part of an organisation? It's really important to me.
Yes, absolutely. I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. I think we show candidates a lot of love during the recruitment process.
Yeah.
As external and internal recruiters, and often, as you say, that sort of drops off at the point of acceptance. So when the candidate accepts the role, often things go a bit quiet. Definitely. And it might be that in that interim period before you start, you just get your offer letter, you accept that, and then there's very little else that actually happens. And then, of course, as you say, actually on your first day, I think people get overwhelmed with information, and after the first few days, they're like, "Oh wow, I can't even think." I've got so much going on in my head. So there's definitely something there about smoothing that sort of period out. So keep engagement levels up,
definitely,
but also bring people into the organisation in a more structured way, a more thoughtful way. So I'm very up for that. Yeah, definitely.
Definitely, I agree, and I think it's really important as we look at, and certainly in the world that we're in currently, and how the shape of employment looks across all sectors moving forward from now with remote working, is actually how do we ensure that our colleagues have a great experience when joining an organisation, and how can we actually make it a lasting moment? Actually, we're joining an organisation and we're proud to be a part of it. But what does that mean? And how, as an organisation, do we ensure that we're supporting that colleague through the beginnings of a new career change? And I think that's really rewarding, and it ensures that you can give people the best opportunity to join an organisation and really grow and set their roots with it, and sort of take their career within that company to where they want it to be.
Yeah, definitely. Those first few weeks are vital, aren't they? I think it really sets your view of the organisation. And we know that a percentage of people leave within the first, say, sort of 8 weeks, and that could be a mismatch between expectation of the role and the reality of it. But often, I'm sure the onboarding process plays a big part in that.
Definitely, I'd agree, and that's some of the work that we look at is evaluating our colleagues' experiences over the first sort of 1, 3, and 6 month period, and into 12 months, but also their recruitment experience. What did they enjoy and what did they not enjoy, and how can we improve? I think as an organisation which supports a range of colleagues, but also supports young people, for me it's really important that we understand how people feel through processes, and what did they like and what can we improve on. I think for me is continually looking at best practice really ensures that we create really exciting opportunities for people.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. And I guess your agency experience very much helps with that. I think when having that agency side where it's very transactional, isn't it? You're on the phone a lot, you're really looking for the next candidate to place. But what you're doing now, obviously, as a head of recruitment at Ambitious About Autism, is you're able to, as you said, to see the whole process end to end. But I think the agency experience definitely helps with that.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I really agree, and I think it teaches people lots of skills in recruitment. Is whilst working in agencies in different sectors is can be quite a challenging environment to sort of initially go into and join a recruitment team or recruitment agency, and there are lots of targets, and it is a predominantly commercial focused or financial focused organization, but there are many skills that you learn talking to a wide range of clients, but also candidates, and I believe I was quite successful when working in recruitment because my skills relied in sort of the longevity of working with candidates is we built quite lasting relationships. So whilst I worked within the temporary or local market and short-term contracts for my agency staff into NHS settings, for me it was about how do we create or how do we have a candidate which is aligned to the organisation that we work for, and we can continuously work over a period of time. And I quite often found myself in a situation where we were also supporting our temporary staff with CPD and looking at how we can ensure that whilst they had a career with an agency, not just as an agency contractor, not just as I'm going to do 6 months here and 3 months here and a year here, it was about how can we give back to a candidate who's working for an organisation. And for me, a lot of my skills were honed in sort of building long-term relationships with candidates. And funny enough, and clients, like I said, TreeHouse School, which is part of Ambition About Autism, was a client of mine 9 years ago. And it was quite ironic then finding the opportunity for the head of recruitment and applying for it. It was really interesting to see how I'd supported them in the past, but actually now could have a much bigger impact in an organisation.
Yes, I think that whole relationship building and looking at candidates as as you say, with a long-term view does pay dividends really over time. I think, talent pooling is another thing that companies try, but it's a constant effort, isn't it? And I think, but not saying that in a bad way, but you have to keep the contact going. You have to find ways of keeping in contact with people, and it might be that because we know that there are thousands and thousands of job roles out on the big job boards. It's fairly frequent that you don't get a response. Now I know that there are, at the moment, I think it's 400 or so applications per role. So that's a lot of people to get back to, but the reality is if someone's not right now, doesn't mean they're not going to be right in 12 months. And of course, if you've given them a bad experience, what are they going to say when you come back and actually you want them at that point? I think that companies should think a little bit more about that sort of talent pooling and relationship building on a wider scale, not just with candidates that are right at the moment.
Definitely, and I completely agree. And I think it's really important. You're bang on. Is that somebody may apply for a role now, but actually in 3 years' time they may apply for a role as an officer level, but actually in 3 years' time they may be the right candidate for your manager role. But actually, if you haven't given them in that first moment, I really believe in creating moments for candidates, and that is touch points throughout the process. How did they feel involved, and how did they feel that they were part of a process? In today's world, it's incredibly challenging with so many applications. How do you ensure that you can reach out to all candidates, but give them a fair understanding of perhaps when they don't have the skills, knowledge, and expertise? And I think that's even more poignant with what we're facing moving forward with Brexit around the corner, which I've spent a considerable amount of time in the organisation looking at now. Is how do we identify talent for the future, knowing that our pool of candidates is only getting tighter? We're losing talent from one area, which is Europe, but there is talent. We potentially could have talent from other areas of the world. But for me, is now more so than ever is ensuring that we create really effective talent pools and pipelines and support people at all levels to either create a career with us, but also share knowledge perhaps so they can have a career somewhere else, because they may be a contact or a valued source that you may need to use in the future.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I like what you said about creating a moment or creating moments. It's so important. And you either create a positive moment or a negative moment, and you might not realize you're creating a negative moment. I think it's obviously, it takes some work to create positive moments, but
definitely
that is relationship building, isn't it?
It is, and one thing to be conscious of is many candidates now aren't applying just for your position. They're applying for many positions out there, and even within COVID circumstances or within the real, back into normal normal world as such as it was. But
Yeah.
there are opportunities out there. So how do you position yourself as an organisation differently to others? So how do you create moments and situations through an applicant process which is engaging and enlightening, but also even more so when you actually hire an individual? So how do you have great touch points and great moments through that onboarding process that makes an individual feel that they are ready and excited and understand what they're walking into a new position, and that's the responsibility as a recruitment team, but as an organisation, that our hiring managers create real lasting moments so somebody can create that really exciting career step in moving into an organisation like Ambitious or anywhere else.
Yeah. No, I really like that. I think that's something that companies should certainly look at very seriously now, particularly, as you say, in the current situation where people are feeling a bit. And obviously, we're going to come on a bit later to general advice for job seekers at the moment. But people are feeling vulnerable and a bit less confident, I guess. There's a lot of redundancies going on. I'm talking to people most days that come back to me. Either I'm connecting on LinkedIn or I'm calling people, and it's frightening, really, how many people are in that position. So, yeah, anything that companies can do to ease that sort of anxiety around the recruitment process, I think, is positive and positive for the future, for those long-term relationships. So we've talked about your move from external to internal. Were there any challenges that you found coming from the agency world, which is very sort of fast-paced, as you said? Although you had that long-term relationship building background anyway, but did you find any differences going external to internal, and anything you had to adapt to?
Yeah, definitely. I think quite a lot, really, as from an agent working in an agency, that you only see a proportion of a client or an employer's decision-making process when hiring somebody. And actually, I think when I transitioned into in-house, I didn't at first understand the amount of additional work. I knew there was a lot more work in regards to the administration that comes with creating a position, the decision-making that's involved, and actually, looking at a lot of the challenges I saw was perhaps working in recruitment, you're trying to maximize your fees, trying to earn the organization that you're working for money, but also earn commission yourself. But transition in the house, key things is actually the table's flipped. You're now trying to save money for an organization, but also create and identify good talent before having to use agencies. For me, was really understanding the bigger picture that involves in making a hiring decision. So a lot of my role now, or even in my last role, was looking at strategic development of services. So actually, as a recruiter, you look at the now. You look at, we have a vacancy, we have a hole or a gap in a service, and we need to fill it with the right candidate, and we need a candidate in immediately. But actually, is how do we ensure that we don't get to a situation where we have an immediate need? So what that means for me is looking at, and in my role now as the head of Ambitious, is strategic development around recruitment and talent mapping. So we now work with our services to look forward. So what does the next 6 months look like? What does the next year, with growth in services, with growth in our schools and college, or growth in our charity services and central services? How do we ensure that we're best prepared to support the development of teams? Yes, we have people will leave organizations for other opportunities or a multitude of reasons. Sometimes you can't be prepared for those, but it's working with our managers to create a culture around succession planning to ensure that we look at CPD for staff. We're developing, for me, and when I look at my team in-house now, is working with my team to identify what does their career look like in recruitment, and is at some point in the future, I may change organizations. Who's the right person to fulfill my shoes, and hopefully within the organization and the teams, creating opportunities and development for those individuals, or CPD into other areas of the organization is really important. So I think for me, lots of challenges came in the first transition was understanding the whole process around going out for recruitment. So quite often as an agency, you think, oh, we have a need, we need it now, and they're at an emergency case. Well, how did they get there? How did they get to that case where they needed to use an agency? Were the content recruitment campaigns and recruitment collateral used to go out and advertise at the first stage, was that not at a standard which was going to attract candidates? So, what was our recruitment brand? How do we position ourselves as an employer which people want to work for? So how do we make it an attractive proposition? How do we use a multiple range of content? I believe that people I do personally, and I think that the general public do, is we now digest content in a multitude of different ways, through webinars, through video content, through YouTube, such as today, through reading blogs and articles, to talking to friends and colleagues. We digest content differently. So actually, how do we ensure that we reach our target audience when hiring a vacancy through a multitude of reasons? So for me, quite quickly, was coming into an in-house setting was looking at what is our proposition? How do people identify us as an employer of choice? And how do we position ourselves? Quite often, organisations are really good about talking about their successes in-house within different departments. We've done X and we've done Y, and this is a great success. And, we've achieved an award here or something like that. Quite often organisations aren't very good about sharing those successes externally to engage future talent and engage, in different areas of the business. How do we engage people into I would like to work for them? Tell me more about that successful piece. Working with schools and colleges, we talk an awful lot about our successful outcomes for our learners and transitioning them into new positions. And it's amazing to see how a learner joins a service, perhaps at the beginning of their school tenure, and actually then seeing them leave 2, 3 years, 5 years, or so long down the corner, a completely different person. We talk so well about that internally. How do we position that externally? So actually people that want to work in this environment can see and feel what it's like to support these young people. And then I think you look at that in different sectors. So for me, the challenges were working with organisations to understand their positioning from a recruitment and as an employer of choice, working with businesses to look at the future of recruitment whilst we have immediate needs now. Actually, what needs could we have in 6, 12, 24 months' time? How do we support that in-house and succession plan and create really good development for our colleagues? But also, how do we look at growth and plan that in advance? So I think for me, the challenges is looking about the bigger picture. Who are we and how do we grow and how do we ensure that we identify talent for the future? I think they were the challenges.
Okay, no, that's interesting. And I think your organisation has a great story in terms of what it does and how it helps people. And I guess unless you communicate that to potential candidates, then they're actually missing out on, I guess, the real purpose of the organisation.
Definitely.
I think so much recruitment, you see very sort of two-dimensional recruitment ads out there, which really end up being just sort of job specs, just lists of things that the employer wants from a candidate, and then you end up with sort of 20 bullet points on an ad, which in no way tells a story of what it's like to actually work there and what the organisation is trying to achieve. And I think younger people coming up into the workplace now, they do want that. They want to understand, okay, so if I'm going to give you, if I'm going to come and work for you, yes, I'll get a salary and I might get benefits and that sort of thing, but what's the purpose of it? And what am I actually going to be doing, and how's it going to make me feel? I think that hasn't been such a feature going back. It has been more about job for life, long-term stability, good salary, pension, all that sort of thing. I think things are going completely the other way, and probably have been for a while, in fact, where, as I say, people now want to know, well, what's it going to do for me? How's it going to make me feel, and that sort of thing. So you're absolutely along the right lines, I think. And I think a lot of other employers probably need to catch up with that and think, how are we perceived out there? And are we really telling our story?
I agree. And I think a big piece in that, and something that we work towards and have done in the last 12 months is how does the organisation share its story, but how do our colleagues share our story? And that's important. Is people want to understand. As a recruiter, we're by background and as still working recruitment in my team, we're really good about selling the pros of come and work for an organisation. We can do X, Y, and Z. Actually, sometimes there are cons in working for an organisation or challenges. So how do we position that? And actually, I can tell you it's a great place to work and for any organisation, and this is why. But actually, would you not rather hear from somebody who is a specialist in that area or is working in a similar role? And I think some of our brand content that we've created in the last 12 months was when recruiting for teaching assistants in our services. I hear from some of our teaching assistants and our learning and behaviour specialists, and let them tell you a little bit about their story. Let them tell you about how they got here and what their opportunities were. Because for me, like you said, people want to know what's in it for them, and actually hear from somebody who's in that. And I think that's really important. Is it's not just positioning it. You're correct, and I think through generations. If you look at the generations and how the average generations of workers and how people's expectations of careers, it's changed significantly in the last, I think, 5 years, perhaps even slightly longer. People now want to see there are lots of opportunities out there. So what can you do to support me? And if you look at the data shared by recruitment agencies and in-house organisations, is people now want to know about how are you investing in me as a person? How are you going to help me in growing my career? And in turn, I will grow with you. And I think it's really important that organisations focus on developing people for their future roles, but also to develop people to develop their services.
Yes, indeed. I do believe that when we spoke earlier about onboarding and making that onboarding experience smooth and relevant and engaging is one thing, but again, if the recruitment process doesn't tell people the true story of what it's like to work somewhere, then again you can get that mismatch where they've joined and they haven't really understood the culture, or I mean, it could be something as simple as just the working practices. Just it doesn't suit them. There's nothing wrong with sort of telling someone about that before they apply even. So as you say, with your teaching assistants, it's a day in the life rather. It's what they do on a day-to-day basis, and that will then appeal to the right people. And some people might think, oh, okay, that's not for me. And I'm glad I've sort of seen now what it actually involves. So I think that it's not just sort of lip service and recruitment marketing and all these sorts of buzzwords. It really does reach out to the right candidates. It attracts them, and it doesn't attract the people who probably aren't right. But previously, taking that sort of two-dimensional, bullet-pointed approach to job ads, you will hire some of the wrong people. I think you'll attract and hire some of the wrong people, and that's why you get the sort of people leaving fairly early on in their time with the organisation, because they just think this isn't quite what I was expecting. So I'm a big advocate of that. I think why put someone in that position, because actually it affects them, it affects the team that you bring them into, because they're like, why are they left? They've only been here 4 weeks, and they've gone already. What's wrong with the place? It's all those sorts of things. And I think lots of those are sort of intangible, but some of those have the biggest impact on people. So yeah, that's I'm very much in line with what you're saying on that. To be fair, I could probably talk about that all day. It's just so fascinating to me, and really interesting to hear the approach that you've taken, and that you recognise that way back that you needed to take that approach. So it's really good, and I hope other heads of recruitment and recruitment directors and recruitment managers are listening to this, are sort of thinking, actually, yeah, that's interesting. Perhaps we need to sort of do a bit more and look into that a bit more. So the sort of second part of this would be to sort of look at recruitment as a career, and I think we've actually done that quite a lot already in what we've said. But if you had any advice for somebody thinking, as you said, I mean, I was the same as you. I fell into recruitment. My first role was actually sales. I was in IT sales, and I fell into that, as a lot of people do. And then I moved into recruitment because it's a natural transition. As you said, it's effectively a sales role. You're on the phone a lot, you're talking to people a lot, and you're selling. But for people who are sort of thinking about recruitment as a career option now, what would your advice be? What's the best way, do you think, to sort of to get into it?
And it's broad. I think, firstly, one thing I'd say is recruitment is an amazing career to join in. And as we talk about, many of us fell into recruitment, and it came an opportunity, and it was around. Actually, it's a great career to be involved in a multitude of different areas, from working in an agency, from financial rewards to actually working in a multitude of different sectors. I worked in the healthcare sector, and actually having an impact and supporting NHS services to support your friends, your families, but also people, is amazing, I think. And then working in-house, looking at how you support an organisation, but support people in their opportunities. So for me, if you're passionate about working with people, about supporting people to have rewarding opportunities, it's a great career. I think getting into recruitment, there are many different ways, from people who have worked in sales. Quite often you find people who have worked as estate agents or different sales settings and want to transition to try something new. Yeah. I think for me is you need to be proactive. What we're looking at skills, you've got to be proactive when in recruitment, and you've got to be someone who's driven by outcomes. Now, everybody has different outcomes and different rewards. Mine are my outcomes now, which are different to when I first started in recruitment. I've driven around seeing people grow and develop. And in my team, I'm really passionate as a manager to see people grow. When I first joined in recruitment, I was passionate about working with a range and multitude of different people from different backgrounds and cultures, but working with different organisations from different backgrounds and cultures and helping them. I also had the interest in earning money. And I think if you want to work in recruitment, you can, if you are successful, and earn good money and grow a career. So I think for me, a typical career path in recruitment is find an organisation. There are lots of recruitment agencies out there in different sectors. I've always had an interest in the healthcare and education industry, even when I was younger. And I found myself joining a healthcare organisation. I worked short term prior to that in other settings which weren't healthcare, but found actually I enjoyed the health and understanding in an NHS setting. So first and foremost is think about the sector that interests you. Could it be healthcare? Could it be education? Could it be working in IT? Are you interested? Do you have a natural interest to a commercial area? Is it something that you want to learn about and work with people who can upskill your knowledge, but also you can upskill theirs? So I think that's the first one. Find an area that you're passionate about, and then work for an organisation which is aligned to your values. I think this is something that's changing, and we're working as an organisation to change that. And I think in agencies are doing that now. Organisations now looking at finding people who are aligned to the organisation's values. Does the business that you want to work for fit your morals and fit your values? And do you fit theirs? Or do you think their values could add value to you? I think it's really important for people to look at it from that perspective. And I think the key thing is you see many recruiters is opportunity in different organisations is a great learning curve. As we talked about a minute ago, previous generations would have a job for life. I worked for several different companies in agencies. Why? Because of opportunity to grow and develop. To opportunity to learn from other people, other managers, other colleagues. Be a sponge. It might sound weird and unusual, but be a sponge. Your colleagues around you can teach you so much. I work in a real inclusive manner with my team now. We have senior recruitment officers, onboarding administrators, and a resourcing manager who works on projects. We work in a round table way. I like to listen and absorb. I may be the head of recruitment, and sometimes I have to make the final decision on things. But I have a group of specialists who have strengths and skills which are my weaknesses, and my strengths and skills are their weaknesses. So learn from others, and at no point I think you can always remember is learn from other people, listen to people's advice and guidance. I think recruitment as a career in agency is really rewarding. It's pressured, it's target driven, but those targets give you a way to ensure that you work proactive and work candidate first or client first. Moving to internal, I would suggest has a different approach, and some people will move straight into internal recruitment and perhaps instead of looking at agencies. If you're interested in internal recruitment, I think you've got to be interested in the bigger picture around recruitment. It's not just finding the talent for now, it's finding the talent for the future. There are a lot more administration when working in-house. You might work with a business area on creating recruitment campaigns which may never go live, but actually what you're doing, and that can be frustrating. They may change tack last minute and say, actually, we're going to go with X. But during that time, you're working on campaigns which you may use in the future. You may be understanding more about a business area which you might not have strength and knowledge in. It's a learning opportunity. And I think that's the key thing about anybody who's looking to get into recruitment is if you're driven and by clear goals, or you're proactive and you're passionate about an area and you're passionate about people, it's a great career where you can financially gain from it, but life experience is huge. You work with a multitude of people and it makes you a much more rounded individual.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think it is sort of character building, excuse me, for various reasons, depending on the environment. I mean, we know some agencies are very target-driven, KPIs, phone calls, and ultimately, it is a bit of a numbers game in agency because the more people you send for interview, the more likely you're going to get placements. Of course, I was always wanting to be more strategic than that, and find the right people, because ultimately the client's paying so they don't have to go through hundreds of CVs. You're sort of doing that
definitely
for them. But yeah, I mean, it is a great industry and you learn so much. And I think if, as you say, if you're proactive and you stick with it and you're consistent, then opportunities come your way, and you do find people who are quite early on in their careers who just do an exceptionally good job. They bring the numbers in, and then they get further opportunity from there, to run a desk, or to manage other people, and even start their own divisions.
Definitely, and it's great. And one thing that worked with agencies and worked with a multitude of different people. It's really interesting as well. One thing I've noticed is quite often in recruitment agencies, if you're really successful and you're earning good money, you have the opportunities to grow and develop. And like I said, create a team, run a desk of colleagues recruiting, or perhaps even become a divisional manager. But at the same time, you have other people, and that's great for some people in recruitment. You also have on the flip of it, and I can think of perhaps 3 or 4 people that I've worked with over the years who are probably some of the most amazing recruiters and are incredibly successful in supporting people in finding work, but financially successful by placing lots of people. Yep. Their skill sets lies in recruiting people, not necessarily managing people. And I can think of these people who were perhaps given opportunities to run desks, but actually found themselves going, I just like making money, or I just enjoy the recruiting side. I don't enjoy the management aspect. And I think thinking about a career in recruitment, think about what you're passionate about. Are you passionate about recruiting and finding the opportunities for people? I was passionate about managing and developing people in my teams. Whilst I enjoyed placing people into new opportunities, I was always passionate and driven by creating teams, starting new businesses, getting it to a point where it was successful, bringing people into that, seeing them develop, and then finding new opportunity. And I think my career was always driven about, I was always passionate about developing people. So whilst I enjoyed the financial aspects of placing lots of people, actually where my interest always lied in creating teams. And I think that in recruitment, you have different people. You have people that want to be really successful recruiters, and you've got people that want to be recruitment managers. And it's about finding that balance. You might not want to be a recruitment manager. That's absolutely fine. Yeah. Grow and develop and be a really successful recruiter, or grow a team. There's so many opportunities in recruitment.
Yes, indeed. And again, I think when we spoke earlier about understanding the culture of an organization before you sign on the dotted line, if you like, or before you even go for an interview, is really important. And I guess I always say to candidates now, it's a two-way process. An interview is a two-way process. You're not there to be interrogated. You're there, both parties are deciding whether they're right for each other. And I think people they do rightly get anxious about interviews and they get nervous. But I think if you go in with the attitude, well, I'm interviewing them as well as they're interviewing me, and if it's not right for me, and what I'm alluding to is what you said, where you could ask an employer, what are the career paths here? They might say, actually, we bring people in, they either do well or they don't. If they do well, they run a desk, and then this is the career. But but equally, they might say, well, yes, there are different opportunities depending on what you want to do. If you want to stay on a desk recruiting, you could do that your whole time with us and earn the money, as you say. So I think it's really important that candidates see the interview process as it's their opportunity to interview the employer as well as the other way around.
I completely agree with you, and it's something we talk an awful lot about. And I think in today's world, people need to remember they're interviewing the organisation. So, when somebody shortlists you for an interview, what they said is, on paper, you have the skills, knowledge, and expertise. You're suitable for the role. We'd like to appoint you, but actually, we'd like to interview you to find out a little bit more, perhaps push in a few areas, understand you as a person, understand how you're going to add value to our organisation. But at the same time, you should be understanding, is this organisation right for me? Do they have the values and that are aligned to my values? Do they sit and are we aligned? Do I think I can make a lasting impact here? Does this organisation fit my current career goals? So I really believe in that. Candidates quite often, when we always have an interview process. Most organisations have an interview process where they will ask you 10 questions, and at the end they'll say, "What questions have you got for me?"
Yes.
Actually, ask questions throughout the interview. Understand the process. If they ask you a question and you want to know more about it, delve into it. Understand why they're asking you that question. They're asking you specific questions to understand if you can undertake the competencies all part of that role. Your time to ask questions, whilst it is always at the end, it actually should also be throughout. And I always encourage people to ask questions throughout an interview process. You want to know more, please ask. And at the end, that's your time to find out, what can they do for you? How can I make this an opportunity that I want to be involved in? What do I need to know? And what do I want to know about this organisation? And I always suggest that people ask questions in the application process as well. Understand before the interview. Make the decision that you want to interview for this role. So find out as much as possible before the interview.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's really important, I think. To be sure that because it's time ultimately, isn't it? It's your time. It's the interviewer's time. To be sure that it's the right sort of organisation for you. So yeah, I'm all for that. In terms of general advice for job seekers, and we before we sort of came on recording this, we used the word unprecedented. We try and avoid sort of saying unprecedented times, but we are in a very unusual period of time at the moment. As we said, probably I think the average is 300-400 applicants per job across the industry at the moment, across the UK, generally at the moment. There are lots of people out there. How can a candidate stand out? So you, as the head of recruitment, a CV lands on your desk. Now, I'm quite big on, writing a CV, but tailoring it for the opportunity.
Yes.
Also, doing some networking, so not being just a sort of a name that lands on a desk. And sometimes the CV speaks for itself.
Definitely.
And that's fine. But I think there's nothing like being a known person, and perhaps that comes back to what we said earlier about talent pooling and knowing the candidates who are out there. But what advice would you give to at the moment to general job seekers who are looking, and what can they do to stand out and get those interviews lined up?
So I think you're completely correct with a few things that you said, and I think the first for me is take your time with your application. Why are you applying to that role? Why, and I understand a lot of people are looking for a job. Some people are looking for a career. You may be employed and you're looking to just have a job to support you through a challenging time, or just in general. But for me is why are you applying for that role? What was it that appealed to you? What made you go, I want to apply, I want to work there because of X? Find that out. I think when you look at a job description, what the job description is telling you is, here's your duties, and then the second piece is your person specification. If you have these skills, knowledge, and experience, you're the right person for us. So how do you draw your application to the person specification? So most managers, when shortlisting, will look at the person specification, look at the essentials first. We as a disability competent employer only work on essentials only. We only ask people to apply with the essential requirements. Do you meet those? And now draw attention to where you meet those in your CV, in your supporting statement. When I applied for this role, I looked at the first 6 person specification points, which were essential criteria, and drew reference to each one of those in my letter. What it meant was my letter was perhaps not supporting letter wasn't written in your traditional letter way, but I made it very clear to my hiring manager and my boss now. you asked for X, this is my experience. You asked for Y, and this is how I delivered that in previous roles. You asked for this, and this is what I've done here. That really helped the hiring manager very quickly. When you look at, in today's world, 400 applications. What they're looking for is they're looking at your CV. Managers may be stressed and feel under pressure to understand and shortlist to get the right people. You're standing out because you're drawing attention. You've asked for this. This is what I have. And actually, also don't be afraid to say, I don't have this experience, but this is what I'm prepared to do. You're right with networking. And I have a colleague in my team now who has been with me 12 months. And when I first went out for our role as a senior recruitment officer, advertising, we were having lots of applications, got in touch with me and said, I'd like to find out a little bit more. Could you tell me a bit more about the post? It was an experienced recruiter from a different sector, working in an agency, wanted to know more about the transition to in-house recruitment, and actually then said, could we have a meeting? Can I pop in one morning? I've got some time off. Could I pop in and have a bit of a chat with you to understand more about the organisation? Yeah. I found myself within 20 minutes of meeting the individual, selling the job to her and saying, you should work here, this is what you can do. Yeah. And that my colleague positioned themselves, whilst they were trying to find out more about the organisation, shared with me their skills, knowledge and expertise. And all of a sudden, as the hiring manager, put me in a situation where I was going, I think you should apply for my role. I know you weren't necessarily interested in this role at first, but I want you to apply. So when the application came through, I was like, I've met this individual. I understand their ethos. I understand their experience. And then when interviewing, whilst we ask the same questions to everybody, I could push them to find out more. I could push them because I already understood who they were. So stand out, network with colleagues in the role. So if you're applying for a position and there are many people in that role, contact them. Use LinkedIn. It is the best networking tool out there for working in all sectors. Find out more about people working there. I am never shy away from somebody dropping me a message. Could you tell me a little bit more about working at Ambitious? 100%. I might, and also I may not be the right person, but let me put you in touch with somebody who has the skills and knowledge or worked in that area of the business who could tell you a little bit more. Make yourself known by putting yourself forward. I think looking at your CV, tailor it, make it relevant to the role you're applying to. Use your person specification, your supporting statement to draw attention to where you meet and don't meet the person specification. And if you don't meet it, how would you learn about that? Network, contact the people hiring for the role. Don't be ashamed to contact them. You're asking them because you're trying to find out more information. Is this the role for me? Position yourself in a way that you are available. You're known in that area. If I was looking for a head of a department, I would quite often look on LinkedIn. Are these people making a noise in their sector? Are they talking? Are they networking? Are they well known? Yeah, I might want to attract them personally. But I think key things are position your application so it's noticed. That's not talking fancy colours and making it attractive. It's tailor it to the role, tailor it to the advert, tailor it to the person specification. But reach out and contact. For every position, if somebody said to me, I've seen your role, I'm interested, I think I'm going to apply. Could you tell me a little bit more about what you're looking for? Now, what I've done as a candidate by saying that to the manager is I found out exactly what the hiring manager wants. Now I'm going to make sure my personal specification is alluded to that. Yes, managers are busy in organizations and they might feel frustrated with people contacting them, dropping them a message on LinkedIn, drop them an email, give them a phone call. There are different ways that you can communicate with people. I would be shocked if any manager said, this person has contacted me and they wanted to find out more about this role. They were annoying. No, actually, really interested. This person dropped me a message, really liked what they said about X, Y, and Z. I remember them. Let me have a little bit more of a detailed look at their application. Yeah. Position yourself and position yourself to position your application so you're noticed. The person specification is your guide to outlining how you meet the needs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic advice. And I wholeheartedly agree. So, I think candidates, especially now, have to stand out. I think the job boards, some of the job boards have like an instant apply button.
Definitely.
where you've uploaded your CV. But the problem with that is that you can just go click, you know, apply. But there's no tailoring. You're not, as you say, you're not showing the employer, well, you know, this is why I'm right. This is why I match your specification. And it's just so important. So I think whilst that one-click apply is quick and easy, it's not the way to go, really.
I agree. So funny enough, we don't have a quick apply on our website.
Yeah.
We need to know more about you. You know, we want to know more about you. We want you to look at our website. We want you to look at the content within our careers site and our website, for you to understand, here's all of the information. We want to give you as much as possible, but we don't have a quick apply because we want people to apply. We need to understand why do you think you're suitable for this position? And hopefully you are. You know, how are you aligned to the organization's values? How are you aligned to the person's specification? Apply for a role, tell us more. Tell us more about you, because we want to know about you if we're going to hire you.
Yes.
It's always important.
That's great advice. And we said at the beginning, we ambitious about autism, as well as the education side. You sort of help people to make that transition out of education into the workplace. So for candidates who are autistic, and there's two aspects to this. I know we're almost up to our hour, but I think I'd love to cover these two. Would be one is, what would your advice be to employers in how they can make adjustments for candidates who are autistic, and what advice would you give to the candidates themselves in how they approach employers, and asking for those adjustments, and you know, any tips for getting through the interview process?
Definitely. And I think from an employer's perspective, hiring young people or people with autism in the workplace, small changes make a huge difference. Every autistic person is different. Just because somebody has a diagnosis of autism doesn't make them the same as somebody else who has a diagnosis of autism. Find out what their needs are and make adjustments to support them. They could be very small adjustments. They could be putting somebody in a situation where they, or an environment which they're more comfortable in, giving them time, working slightly more flexibly. From a recruitment perspective, and I'm going through a recruitment application process, autistic candidates can find the traditional interview process quite difficult. Not knowing what to expect from the interview can be very difficult for autistic candidates, and can put them on the back foot immediately. Something that we do is we are a disability confident employer, and I'd recommend any organisation to look at disability confident. It's a great way to really look at your organisation, but your collateral and your recruitment practices to ensure that you are inclusive. And I think that's really important. But one thing we do is we ask people if they're confident to share if they have a disability, be that autism, and how can we support you? What reasonable adjustments would you need for an interview? Quite often, and something that we've done is actually, if we have a young person apply for a role who's autistic, and we found out actually, they need time to prepare, a question and answer setting when they don't know what the questions are can find quite anxious or quite challenging for somebody. So actually, we quite often send out the interview questions in advance. We're not testing how you think on your feet. We're finding out more about, talk to me about this situation. And I think when you think about working in an environment, how often do we say, you're a specialist in X, I need you to tell me immediately what you do? Actually, we quite often go, could you give me some more information about X? And you'll have time to go away and review that. Think about that in your interview practice. Small changes by recruiters make a huge difference. Like I said, providing the questions in advance, basing them on past experience rather than hypothetical scenarios makes a huge difference. It doesn't rely on social imagination. It relies on them talking about actual situations. I think training, understanding autism, understanding employers to increase their understanding of autism, really important. We as an organisation, Bishop Autism, we run a training program for employers to build awareness on what autism is and how they can support their autistic colleagues. It's really, understanding is key to be able to support them. The training's amazing. What it does is it supports you in understanding how best to support people. People with young people with autism, all people with autism, have great skills. Those skills can be used in different ways, and it's how organisations can understand those skills and really support that. I think for me, what support would I recommend to autistic job seekers? If you have a disability, you're legally entitled to request reasonable adjustments. Be confident in asking and sharing you have reasonable adjustments. I'm dyspraxic. during my interview process here at Ambitious, I did not declare I was dyspraxic through the first stage. Yeah. I then had to do some intro exercises, which then showed my challenges. Yeah. During my second interview, my hiring manager asked me, you had some unusual results in your, and I said, actually, I'm dyspraxic, and this is why. Instantly, as an organisation, my manager was like, how can we support you? With this, we understand now. We wouldn't have done this in this situation. So actually, I made my applicant journey difficult by not being proactive and confident in saying, actually, I have dyspraxia. This impacts me by X, Y, and Z. If you ask me to do something in a certain time period, I might not be able to deliver that, but I can do it in this way. So be confident in sharing, because actually organizations want to know how best to support you, how to give you the best opportunity to present yourself in an application or interview process. That's really important. We ourselves run an employment program for people with autism called Employ Autism. I would recommend anybody with autism that wanted to find out more, check it out on our website, Employ Autism. It's a unique scheme that works with employers and young people and careers professionals to build a UK network of professionals with skills and knowledge and expertise to support more young people with autism. You could work with our trained careers advisors to understand more about positioning yourself. Yeah. It also creates sort of a nationwide system of change, which is increasing knowledge and increasing organisations' knowledge in young people with autism. So I think employers, check out Employ Autism, little plug, but understand more about how you can position yourself. Check out Disability Confidence. I think it's every organisation should join Disability Confidence. Stand up and make a change and learn how best to support colleagues. In today's world, we need to support colleagues in a multitude of different ways. And then as a candidate, be confident in your unique skill sets. Yep. Be confident in your disability and find out what reasonable adjustments can be made to support your interview process. An interview, you need to position and present yourself in the best possible way. So tell them if you need some support. Tell them you may need additional time to reflect on questions. So many people think in an interview, and just in general, it's one of my favourite tricks when interviewing myself, and I've always shared with people, is when interviewing, someone asks you a question and you think you have to answer it immediately. Quite often the question can stump you. I always, a hack that I say to everybody is always ask for a drink, a glass of water, because having that sip of water gives you 2 seconds to analyse the question, position yourself, and then answer it. And I always encourage everybody to have a drink. It gives you a little bit of a moment to break that question answer session, gives them the time to process that question and then concise your answer.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's really good. I've never heard of that before. That's a brilliant idea. Well, look, Jack, I massively appreciate your time, and the links, the websites that you mentioned, we'll put them up on the screen so people can see those. And yeah, we definitely encourage people to visit. You said it's Employ Autism.
Employ Autism. As an employer or as a candidate, a person with autism who wants to find more about support, advice and guidance, check out Employ Autism. And then as employers who are looking about creating more inclusive programs for hiring people, Disability Confidence. We are a Disability Confident leader. Anybody can contact me for more information. If not, I can share the link with you. And we actively encourage all organisations to look more inclusively when attracting talent.
Okay, excellent. I think we've covered lots. It's been absolutely fascinating, and I'd be more than happy to talk for another hour, but I know you've got a busy day ahead of you, so we'll let you go. But Jack, thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Thank you.
Perhaps we can do a follow up when things are a little bit sort of more back to normal in terms of what's going on out there in the world at the moment. But again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks very much. Cheers, Jonathan.